Chapter 1. The Discovery. The steam shovel bit into the red Colorado earth with a mechanical groan that echoed across the construction site, sending clouds of dust swirling into the crisp mountain air. It was early spring in 1955, and the town of Blackwood, nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, was buzzing with the promise of progress. The new highway project was supposed to connect Blackwood to Denver, cutting through the rugged terrain that had isolated the small mining community for decades. Elijah Harlan, was the lead surveyor for the State Department, a practical man in my 40s who'd spent most of my life mapping out the untamed West. My crew was a mix of locals and out-of-towners, hardy folks used to the bite of high-altitude wind and the unpredictability of mountain soil. Tom Riley, my right-hand man and a Blackwood native with a face weathered like old leather, operated the shovel that day. He'd grown up hearing tales from his father about the old silver mines that dotted the area, shafts abandoned after the bust in the 1890s. "Elijah, this ground feels off," Tom shouted over the engine's roar as the bucket scooped another load of dirt. "Too soft, like it's hollow underneath." I waved him off at first, chalking it up to nerves. We'd hit pockets of loose soil before, nothing unusual in these parts. But when the shovel crashed through with a sudden jolt, dropping into empty space below, I knew something was wrong. The machine tilted precariously, and Tom killed the engine just in time to prevent it from toppling into the void. We gathered around the edge of the newly formed sinkhole, peering into a darkness that seemed to swallow the sunlight. "What in God's name is that?" murmured Sarah Jennings, our geologist fresh out of the University of Colorado. She was young, barely 25, with sharp eyes and a notebook always at the ready. The hole was about 10 feet across, revealing not natural rock but smooth, carved stone steps descending into the gloom. They weren't rough-hewn like the mine entrances I'd seen. These were precise, almost machined, with edges that caught the light in unnatural ways. I grabbed a lantern from the truck and lowered it on a rope, watching the flame flicker against walls etched with strange symbols, geometric patterns that twisted in ways that made my head ache. "This isn't a mine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Looks like some kind of ruins." The crew muttered among themselves, excitement mixing with unease. Blackwood had its share of Native American legends, stories of ancient peoples who vanished long before the settlers arrived, but nothing like this. By afternoon, we'd secured the site with ropes and called in the foreman, Marcus Hale, a burly man from Denver with a no-nonsense attitude. "Seal it up," he barked. "We can't afford delays for some old Indian burial ground." But Sarah insisted on a closer look, and I backed her up. Curiosity gnawed at me. In all my years surveying, I'd never seen stonework like this. We rigged up harnesses and descended the first few steps, the air growing cooler and damper with each foot. At the bottom of the initial flight, about 30 feet down, the stairs opened into a chamber. Our lanterns revealed more carvings on the walls, figures that looked human but elongated, performing rituals around what appeared to be a central altar. "These aren't Native American," Sarah whispered, tracing a symbol with her finger. "The style is wrong. Older, maybe pre-Columbian by thousands of years." Tom, who'd followed us down, crossed himself. "My pa used to say these mountains hold secrets best left buried. Said the Utes avoided certain valleys for a reason." We collected a few loose stone fragments for analysis and climbed back up, the weight of the discovery settling over us like the gathering clouds. That night, as I lay in my bunk at the construction camp, I couldn't shake the image of those symbols. They seemed to shift in my memory, forming patterns that whispered at the edge of my thoughts. Chapter 2. The Expert Arrives. Word of our find spread faster than a wildfire in dry timber. By the next morning, reporters from Denver were sniffing around, and the state archaeologist, Dr. Evelyn Thorpe, was on her way from Boulder. She arrived in a dusty Ford sedan, a woman in her 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a briefcase full of maps and journals. "Mr. Harlan," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "this could be the find of the century." We led her to the site, where the crew had erected a makeshift barrier. Evelyn descended without hesitation, her flashlight beam dancing over the carvings. Her face paled as she examined the walls. These symbols, I've seen similar ones in unpublished reports from the Southwest. Mesa Verde, but deeper, more intricate. She pulled out a yellowed photograph from her briefcase, showing stone blocks from a 1920s dig in Arizona. The patterns matched ours almost exactly. What do they mean? Sarah asked, her notebook filling with sketches. Evelyn hesitated. The reports suggested they were warnings. Structures built by a civilization predating known history, possibly tied to cataclysmic events. Floods, earthquakes, myths of a lost people who delved too deep into the earth. Tom snorted. Sounds like those old prospector tales. Ghosts in the mines, luring men to their doom. But Evelyn's expression was serious. Those tales might have roots in truth. In 1927, a mining crew in Nevada hit a similar chamber. They sealed it after 3 men vanished inside. We spent the day documenting the site, photographing every inch. As evening fell, a strange hum emanated from the depths, a low vibration that set our teeth on edge. Equipment settling. Marcus dismissed it, but I saw the worry in his eyes. That night, dreams plagued me. Endless staircases spiraling into darkness, voices murmuring in a tongue I almost understood. I woke in a sweat, the hum still echoing faintly from the site. Chapter 3: Deeper Exploration. Against Marcus's protests, we decided to probe further. Evelyn brought specialized gear, cameras, measuring tools, and a team of 2 assistants, young graduates named Luke and Clara. We widened the entrance slightly and rigged lights down the stairs. The chamber extended farther than we'd thought, branching into corridors lined with more carvings. Sarah and I led the way, our footsteps echoing unnaturally. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a wall panel depicting figures descending stairs, their forms changing as they went deeper, elongating, twisting into shapes that defied anatomy. "It's like a story, a transformation." Evelyn joined us, her voice hushed. "Similar to Aztec codices, but these predate them by millennia. Perhaps a warning about what lies below." Tom refused to go down, staying topside with Marcus. "I've heard enough from my pa," he said. He worked a mine in 28 that caved in after they found odd stones. Said the earth itself turned against them. As we explored, the hum grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. Luke set up a seismograph, frowning at the readings. "There's activity below us. Not tectonic, rhythmic, almost artificial." We found a second set of stairs leading down, steeper and narrower. Clara shone her light into the void. "How deep does this go?" No one answered. That afternoon, while cataloging artifacts, Sarah cut her finger on a sharp stone edge. "Ouch," she muttered, but then her eyes widened. "Elijah, feel this." The stone's warm. Indeed, it pulsed with faint heat, as if alive. Back at camp, Evelyn shared more from her files, classified documents hinting at a network of such sites across the Rockies, discovered and sealed during the Depression-era works projects. "The government knew," she said. "They buried the reports to avoid panic." Chapter 4: The Warning Signs. The next day brought trouble. Our equipment malfunctioned. Radios crackled with static, tools went missing. Luke swore he saw shadows moving in the corridors, but we chalked it up to fatigue. Tom pulled me aside. "Elijah, my pa's journal mentions this. He found a chamber like yours in 31. Symbols that glowed, voices in the dark. They lost half the crew before dynamiting the entrance." I dismissed it as superstition, but doubt crept in. Evelyn was obsessed, spending hours transcribing symbols. "These aren't just art," she said. "They're a language. Instructions, perhaps, for awakening something." Sarah's cut wouldn't heal. It throbbed, and she complained of whispers in her sleep. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains, lightning illuminating the site. Clara woke screaming, claiming figures had visited her tent, tall and thin, with eyes like voids. We found footprints around the camp, elongated, not quite human. Marcus wanted to quit, but Evelyn convinced us to press on. "This is history," she argued. "We can't walk away." Chapter 5: The Descent. We prepared for a full descent. Ropes, lanterns, provisions. We treated it like a mining expedition. Evelyn led, her excitement palpable. The second staircase wound down for what felt like miles, the air thickening with an acrid scent. Walls gleamed with moisture, symbols glowing faintly now. At the bottom, a vast hall opened, pillars carved like twisted spines supporting a ceiling lost in shadow. In the center, a dais with an ornate stone slab, etched with more figures. "This is it," Evelyn breathed. "The heart of the complex." Luke's seismograph went wild, readings off the charts. "Something's moving down here." Sarah touched the slab, and the glow intensified. Voices echoed. Not whispers, but clear calls in an ancient tongue. I understood fragments, promises of knowledge, power. Tom, who'd reluctantly joined, clutched a family heirloom, a silver cross from his father. "We need to leave," he urged. But Evelyn pressed forward, discovering side chambers filled with artifacts. Tools of unknown metal, crystals that hummed when touched. Clara pocketed one, her eyes glazing over. As we ascended, the voices followed, louder in our minds. Chapter 6, The Awakening. Back on the surface, chaos ensued. Clara vanished that night, her tent empty save for the crystal, now pulsing red. We searched the site, finding her footprints leading back to the hole. Then nothing. Marcus radioed for help, but static drowned the signal. "Interference from below," Luke said. Evelyn confessed. She'd been tracking these sites for years, part of a secret society of scholars. "The structures are alive," she said, "built by beings who retreated underground eons ago, waiting for the right moment to return." Sarah's wound festered, symbols appearing around it like tattoos. She heard the voices constantly, urging her deeper. Tom showed me his father's journal. Entries about a 1930s dig where men changed, becoming something else. "They call them the Deep Ones," he read. "Eternal, patient, reshaping flesh to their will." That day, shadows lengthened unnaturally. Luke saw figures in the corridors, tall, pale, moving within human grace. We barricaded the entrance, but the ground trembled, cracks forming. Chapter 7, The Betrayal. Evelyn's true motive surfaced. "I've communicated with them," she admitted during a heated meeting. "They chose me years ago, after I found a site in Utah. They promise evolution, transcendence." Her skin had paled, eyes reflecting an inner light. Marcus confronted her, but she moved too fast, knocking him down with unnatural strength. "The awakening has begun," she said. 17 sites across the country, activated by recent digs. Mines, highways, they're rising. Sarah succumbed next, her symbols glowing. "They're beautiful," she murmured before slipping into the night, drawn back to the depths. We heard screams echoing up, then silence. Tom and I armed ourselves with dynamite from the construction stores. "My pa sealed his site," he said. "Blew it to hell." But Evelyn sabotaged the fuses, her transformation accelerating, limbs elongating, voice multilayered. Chapter 8, The Confrontation. We descended one last time, lanterns blazing. The hall teemed with movement. Figures emerging from shadows, their forms shifting like liquid stone. Evelyn stood on the dais, merged with the slab, her body twisting into something ancient. "They remember when the world was young," she intoned, "before your kind crawled from the mud." The voices assaulted our minds, offering visions of lost cities, eternal life. Tom clutched his cross, reciting prayers from the journal. We fought through, placing charges. Luke, who'd stayed topside, radioed warnings, tremors spreading, other sites reporting similar horrors. "The mountains are shaking," he said. Evelyn lunged, but Tom ignited a flare, scorching her. We retreated, detonating the charges behind us. The explosion roared, collapsing tunnels. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The blast sealed the site, but not before a final surge of energy rippled out. Blackwood trembled, buildings cracking. We evacuated the town as spires of black stone pierced the earth in the distance. Other awakenings. Evelyn's body was recovered, twisted beyond recognition. Sarah and Clara were gone, claimed by the deep. Tom burned his father's journal. Some secret should die, he said. I reported to authorities, but they classified it, blaming earthquakes. Whispers persisted. Voices in the mines, shadows in the hills. Chapter 10, The Legacy. Years later, in 1960, I returned to Blackwood, now a ghost town. The site was overgrown, but I felt the hum beneath my feet. The deep ones waited, patient as stone. We delayed them, but their network endured. One day, when humanity dug too deep again, they'd rise. And this time, there'd be no sealing the door. The end came not with a bang, but a whisper from the earth, calling us home to the dark. Years had passed since that fateful explosion in the foothills of Blackwood, Colorado, but the echoes of those events refused to fade into the quiet annals of forgotten history. It was 1965 now, a decade after our desperate stand against the awakening horrors beneath the earth. The world had moved on in many ways. The space race was in full swing. Civil rights marches filled the streets of the South, and rock and roll blared from transistor radios in every American household. But for me, Elijah Harlan, the former surveyor turned reluctant guardian of unspeakable secrets, life had become a shadowed existence, haunted by memories that no amount of time could erode. That I had relocated to a small cabin on the outskirts of Denver, far enough from Blackwood to pretend the past was buried, but close enough that the Rocky Mountains loomed in my rearview mirror like accusatory sentinels. The town itself had been abandoned after the earthquake we blamed for the destruction. Official reports cited seismic instability from old mining operations, and the highway project was rerouted 20 miles east. Blackwood became a ghost town, its buildings sagging under the weight of neglect, weeds choking the streets where children once played. The government had sealed off the area with fences and warning signs, claiming it was for safety reasons, but I knew better. They had their own teams down there in the early days after our escape, poking and prodding, only to pull out abruptly when the whispers started affecting their men too. Tom Riley, my steadfast companion through the ordeal, had fared little better. He moved back to his family's old homestead in Wyoming, taking up ranching to keep his hands busy and his mind occupied. We exchanged letters sporadically, terse missives that avoided direct mention of what we'd seen, but circled around it like vultures over carrion. The cattle get restless at night, he'd write. Hear things in the wind that sound like old voices. I'd respond with banalities about city life, but between the lines, we both knew the truth. The deep ones, as his father's journal had named them, weren't truly gone. We'd merely slammed a door in their face, and ancient entities like that had all the patience of geological epochs. Dr. Evelyn Thorpe's body, or what was left of it, had been recovered from the rubble, a grotesque fusion of human and something utterly alien. The coroner's report listed explosion trauma, but those of us who saw it knew the transformation had been well underway before the dynamite did its work. Her eyes, frozen in death, still held that unnatural gleam, as if peering into depths we mortals weren't meant to fathom. Sarah Jennings and Clara, the young assistants who'd been claimed by the call, were never found. Their families received condolence letters about a tragic accident, and life insurance payouts hushed any further inquiries. Luke, the seismologist, had a nervous breakdown shortly after and was institutionalized in Boulder. Last I heard, he spent his days drawing endless spirals on the walls of his room, muttering about networks under the skin of the world. As for Marcus Hale, the foreman, he drank himself into an early grave, unable to reconcile the rational world of construction timetables with the madness we'd unleashed. His widow sent me a box of his belongings after his passing, including a charred fragment of stone from the site. I buried it in my backyard under a slab of concrete. But even now, on quiet nights, I swear I can feel a faint warmth radiating from the earth there. The conclusion to our story, if it can be called that, didn't arrive in a neat package tied with Resolution's bow. Instead, it unfolded gradually, like the slow creep of continental drift, revealing itself in snippets of news, unexplained phenomena, and personal reckonings that spanned the ensuing years. I found myself drawn into a reluctant vigil, collecting clippings and rumors about similar incidents across the country. The network Evelyn had mentioned, 17 sites, she said, was real, and our actions in Blackwood had rippled outward, delaying but not halting the inevitable that IT started with small anomalies. In 1956, a year after the incident, a mining operation in West Virginia collapsed under mysterious circumstances. The official story was a methane explosion, but survivors whispered of singing stones and shadows that moved against the light. I drove out there under the guise of a geological consultant, interviewing the shell-shocked workers in dingy bars. One man, a grizzled veteran named Harlan, no relation, described carvings on the cavern walls that matched those from our site, geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you blinked. They called to us, he said, his hands trembling around a whiskey glass. Promised gold veins deeper than we'd ever dreamed. But when we followed, the tunnels twisted, and we couldn't find our way back. 3 men vanished in that collapse. Their bodies never recovered. The mine was sealed, but not before I snuck in with a flashlight and a camera. The symbols were there, pulsing faintly in the dark. I developed the photos in a makeshift darkroom back home, and staring at them, I felt that familiar chill, the same one that had gripped me on those stone steps in Blackwood. The deep ones were probing, testing the barriers we'd erected. By 1958, reports multiplied. A dam construction in California hit an underground chamber during blasting. Workers reported eerie hums and visions of elongated figures in the mist. The project was halted, reclassified as unstable bedrock, but leaks from engineers spoke of artifacts pulled from the depths, tools of iridescent metal that defied analysis. I corresponded with one of them, a woman named Dr. Lydia Grant, who sent me sketches. They depicted staircases spiraling into infinity, much like the ones we'd encountered. The metal sings, she wrote. It responds to touch, warming like living flesh. Lydia disappeared shortly after, her apartment ransacked. Authorities called it a robbery gone wrong, but I knew better. The deep ones, or their agents, were silencing those who got too close. Evelyn had been one such agent, transformed over years of exposure. How many others walked among us, their humanity eroding from within. In 1960, the year Kennedy promised to put a man on the moon, I experienced my first direct encounter since Blackwood. It was during a solo hike in the San Juan Mountains, seeking solace in nature's vastness. The trail led through an old ghost town, remnants of the Silver Rush. As dusk fell, I heard it, a low hum emanating from a boarded-up mine shaft. Curiosity, that damnable trait, drew me closer. Peering through the cracks, I saw a faint glow. Symbols etched on the wooden supports, fresh and glowing. I backed away, heart pounding, but not before a voice whispered in my mind. Not words, but impressions. Promises of knowledge, the true history of the earth, civilizations that rose and fell before dinosaurs walked. I fled, driving through the night back to Denver. That encounter left me shaken, questioning my sanity. Was it real, or a phantom born of trauma? Tom's letters grew more urgent around then. The ranch is changing, he wrote. Cattle born with extra limbs, grass growing in patterns like those symbols. I hear them at night, calling my name. I visited him that summer, finding a man aged beyond his years, his eyes hollow. We pored over his father's journal, what was left after he'd burned most of it. The surviving pages detailed rituals, symbols to ward off the influence, carved in silver or bone that we experimented, etching protective sigils around his property. For a time, it worked, the anomalies ceased. But it was a temporary reprieve. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, When the world teetered on nuclear brinkmanship, another site activated. This one in Alaska during oil exploration. Drillers reported earth songs and men walking into blizzards, never to return. The Cold War paranoia masked it. Soviet sabotage, they claimed, but I connected the dots through back channels.